Essen, your final conclusion?
Yeah, thank you. So I want to bring it back, and Professor Graffi helped quite a bit, to this idea that this is not a normative argument we're making. We're not talking about whether populism is good, at least not here, or populism is bad, whether right-wing populism or left-wing populism. The question being put to us is, will populism continue to rise? We've posited, or at least I posited, that there's a number of trends that show that it's rising. It's a pretty simple formula, right? X, Y, and Z exists. There's no signs of it going down, and thus populism will rise. And the argument the other side kind of keeps making, which is confusing for me, is ways to tackle populism or pessimism or optimism. To me, that's really irrelevant. The question is, will populism continue its rise? And the overwhelming amount of data shows that it will, and this is how human beings make decisions. They look at pre-existing data, draw a conclusion. This does not mean that there's not a small chance it may not, but vast majority of the data trends in this direction. And you can look at, if we're really going to go down this route, we can look at just the last 2 years. Just last weekend in Brazil, you saw a authoritarian populist leader who was stabbed get enough votes to make the runoff. Last month in September, you saw the Swedish Democrats become the third largest party in Sweden. You've seen the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic is a far-right authoritarian. Poland as well. Thanks for that assist. Viktor Orban is now the longest-serving prime minister in Hungary. I could go on. We talked about Austria. In Italy, you have a number of populist movements, and the Five-Star movement is the largest party in the country. These do not sound like the dying gasps of a populist moment. They sound like populism is on the rise. And to go back to your question, I'm a refugee to the United States. So I was a refugee from the Persian Gulf War. There's always a Persian Gulf War, but the one in 1990. And the reason why it's important for us to recognize that populism is on the rise, because if we don't, you end up seeing the end results of something when an authoritarian populist leader, for instance, becomes a dictator. And you see what happens when something like that happens. I went through refugee camps in different countries. And so my last point, my last 10 seconds, is to say all of this, why is all of this important? It's important because we have a number of leaders here today, and we need to think critically about, it's one thing to say populism is on the rise, but now we need to think about what can we do based on those trends that we saw, political representation, xenophobia, what can we do to assess and ameliorate those trends? How can we curb this rising tide of populism? Thank you.
Thank you, Essen.